And Alec, the interesting thing is you mentioned this. How having kids as they grow up, you grow up, and that was one of the really surprising things about being a father is that I felt like I was also being fathered as I was fathering Gabriel. So, for example, this issue about being relationally present. So I was learning how to do that as I was fathering Gabriel, and it's absolutely true. The amount of growth that a dad goes through as his kids grow is pretty amazing. It was really surprising to me.
What's doing, everybody? I'm Alec Lace. Thank you for watching First Class Fatherhood. Today's guest on the podcast is Tobias Iaconis. Tobias is a Hollywood screenwriter who in 2017 was on the list of the top 100 new screenwriters in Hollywood. He's worked on projects such as 5 Feet Apart and the upcoming Netflix feature Night Books. It's a lot of fun to have him on the podcast today, so get down there, smack the subscribe button, tap the like, and let's jump into it right now with Tobias Iaconis on First Class Fatherhood. Joining me now, First Class Father Tobias Iaconis. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you, Alec. I'm glad to be here.
All right, let's start it right here. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
We have one son, Gabriel. He's 13 years old. He was a bit of a miracle baby. We are very blessed to have him in our lives and in our family.
Yeah, very cool. What kind of sports or activities is he into?
He is not very athletic, kind of takes after me. But he's a great musician, piano, saxophone, guitar. He's also a big nerd like me. So he loves fantasy. He loves Dungeons and Dragons. He's reading Lord of the Rings for the second time right now. He is a great, sweet, fun kid.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, my oldest is like that as well. He knocked out the Harry Potter series when he was about 12. Yes. He's big into that as well. If you could, Tobias, please just take a second to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
Yeah, sure. My background is I was born in Germany, actually, to an American dad and a German mom. My dad worked for the Department of Defense, U.S. Department of Defense, and so I went to Army and Air Force schools in Germany. I went to German kindergarten, then first grade to high school, graduated from high school in Germany. Went to college in Philadelphia for 4 years, and then couldn't wait to get out to LA and try to make it as a filmmaker. And I've been in LA now for, almost 30 years. I met my wonderful, beautiful wife here, Elizabeth, and we live in Sherman Oaks with our son Gabriel and our 95-pound English Labrador, Pika. He's around here somewhere.
I'm sure we'll see popping up here or there. But so obviously an amazing journey here, spanning across the globe here. So you said son's 13. So about how old were you then when you first became a father, and how did becoming a dad kind of change your perspective on life?
Yeah, so I became a dad in my late 30s. And, it introduced... Being a dad kind of introduced one of the great battles of my life, because I realized that I'm naturally programmed to choose activity over relationship. I'll always go to doing something rather than relating with someone. And so having Gabriel, and I began to learn this lesson when I got married to my wife. And by the time we had Gabriel, we had almost been married 10 years. But having my son brought it to the next level in the sense that I really had to work with choosing to be present and available to my kid rather than work, either doing my work as a screenwriter or chores around the house or paying bills or whatever. I always naturally gravitate towards activity. A lot like my own father, I was never very... still am not naturally comfortable with just engaging in relationship. And so that's one of the great, it's been a joyful struggle. I think I've had good days, I've had bad days over the 13 years of Gabriel's life. But it's definitely been something that I've really had to wrestle with. to this day, and I probably will, always will be. And it's the same issue I have with my wife in our marriage, is being present and available to her on a daily basis rather than just occupying myself, which is sort of my go-to.
Yeah, and I think what you say there, Tobias, is very true. Just that I find that myself. I mean, a lot of times we're trying to help our kids grow up, but we're actually growing up because of them too. Like with each new stage that we're introduced to. My oldest is 14, so I'm right there with you there. Mine are 14, 13, 10, and 6 right now, and with each stage opens up all new things that I'm learning about myself and how to handle them, especially when it comes to disciplining each one. They all require a different style of discipline. And I'll hit you with that then. What type of disciplinarian are you as a dad? And is that different than the discipline style that you grew up with?
Yeah, discipline, it's been great. Gabriel is a very, very easygoing. I mean, who knows? He just turned 13. This is probably going to change. But discipline has never been all that much of a problem in our household. He's always been very easygoing, very. He's always been a good listener, and we've been fortunate in that regard. That has not been a huge struggle for us. In terms of my own childhood. My father was a very good and generous man, but he was very emotionally unavailable. Again, going back to sort of having trouble living in relationship. And so I was always trying to please him. I was always trying to get his attention. So again, that sort of negates the need for all that much discipline in my household, because I was always trying to be the pleaser. I was always trying to get my father's attention, and his affection. And fortunately, in this household, I think I've done an okay job in knowing that Gabriel is loved, that he doesn't have to work for my approval. He doesn't have to work for my affection like I was doing as a kid. And so who knows? As he turns a teenager, the discipline thing may become a bigger issue, but it hasn't been so far. And Alec, the interesting thing is, you mentioned this, how having kids as they grow up, you grow up, and that was one of the really surprising things about being a father, is that I felt like I was also being fathered as I was fathering Gabriel. So, for example, this issue about being relationally present. So I was learning how to do that as I was fathering Gabriel, and it's absolutely true. The amount of growth that a dad goes through as his kids grow is pretty amazing. It was really surprising to me.
Yeah, and it takes time too. With time, it grows through, and depending on your partner, your wife, your girlfriend, whatever it may be, too, they're coming at it sometimes from a different angle. So it's a matter of understanding where each of you are coming from, and that's the process. It's not a simple process, but it's definitely one that's beneficial to all the parties involved in it. And I talk about all the time the fatherless crisis that we have going on in a country where kids that are growing up without that father figure in their life. I mean, it causes some detrimental results in our society. So it's definitely important to nourish these relationships as they come along. And pulling it into what you do here, Tobias. Now, obviously, the coronavirus has, much suffering has been happened here. The film industry has been crushed as a part of this too. What has it been like for you getting work, doing projects during the entire pandemic? How has it been for you work-wise?
Yeah, I have a writing partner, and she and I joke that the coronavirus has introduced people to how she and I live every day, because we're just locked in a room, just in front of our computers, just writing all day long. But we were very fortunate, Mickey and I, my writing partner and I, were very fortunate in that we landed a couple of jobs at the top of 2020, January and February, just before the pandemic hit. And we locked those jobs in. And then most screenwriting jobs take 6 to 12 months to play out, the first draft, the second draft, getting feedback from producers and studios. So during the pandemic, we were Mickey and I were working on those movies. Now that said, it was definitely difficult. It was difficult to be creative. It was difficult to focus. I mean, just trying to focus. I don't like writing. I love movies. I've never liked writing, and so it's always been an issue for me to just sit down and do the work. Always, probably the day I die, just sitting down doing the work is a struggle. And last year it was definitely twice the struggle. Just to stop doom scrolling, to stop looking at the news, to try to shut out the world and all the pain and suffering that was happening, and to write a funny scene or a romantic scene or whatever. It definitely was hard, but we were blessed at least to sort of be gainfully employed, which is not true for as you were saying, a lot of the colleagues in the business and in any business around the world. They were really those businesses were really hit hard. Unfortunately, we were able to, Mickey and I, we had these couple of scripts that we were contractually required to get out there, and we were paid for them. And so it was good.
Yeah, and I know the name of the book, the War of Art. I think it was Stephen Pressfield. I think he talks all about that, about how difficult it is to sometimes just sit down and get the work done.
Resistance, yes, I think he calls it resistance. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And now, you know what, too, what kind of advice do you have for the parents out there that have kids that are interested in maybe a screenwriting career, writing career? What kind of advice would you give to the parents out there that have kids that are interested in how do they go about pursuing it? What's the best way to do it?
Yeah. Probably one of the biggest pieces of advice as I would give is try to encourage reading. So reading is obviously the sort of is obviously the first sort of introduction that kids have to stories and to storytelling. And so if kids can read to their parents when they're very young, and then encourage the kids reading on their own. My family and I, we actually still read together as a family every night. It's easy to do with one child because we only have this one age group that we have to worry about. We don't have to try to find books that kind of span multiple age groups. So it's easy for us to do it. Right now we're reading through the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series with our son. But so we still try to do that every night, maybe just half an hour at night. But Gabriel has become a big reader on his own, and any filmmaker, if you want to be a screenwriter or a director, cinematographer, whatever it is, every person involved in movie making is storytelling to some degree. They're either storytelling with how they light a scene, how they write a scene, how they direct a scene, how they act a scene, if you want to be an actor. And being a reader is one of the best ways to sort of build that muscle of storytelling. And then watch movies with them. We do the same thing. For the first few years, Gabriel was watching a lot of cartoons. We weren't really watching the same things he was, but now we are. We watched through the Lost in Space series on Netflix, the Cobra Kai series on YouTube, and then Netflix. I think we're going through his Dark Materials on HBO right now, and we just watched those together. And as he's gotten older, we've also talked critically. So we not only enjoy the content, but then afterwards we actually sort of talk about, oh, well, this could have been better, this could have been done differently, or this was really great. Why was this scene so impactful? So actually start introducing sort of critical thinking to the content that you're taking in. But that comes obviously older when they're in their teens, when they're sort of interested in having those kind of discussions.
Yeah, really great stuff, Tobias. And I'm a big reader myself. I'm a ferocious reader, and I'm somebody that never read. So it's really encouraging for me to see my kids take an interest in it. Like my older one, like I mentioned, he loves reading, so he does all the time. And now my 10-year-old, he's reading books, doing it on his own, and it's really awesome to see. And I think it's awesome. Now, how about as far as did becoming a father have any influence on your writing style, or which particular roles or jobs that you take on as a result of being a dad?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime you become a dad, you begin to think about the world that your children are growing up in and your contribution, your part in that world. So the content of my, scripts, I think I definitely took a closer eye to, are the messages that I am sending here in this story that I'm telling, is this something I can be proud of? Is it something that my son can watch now as a child, or even when he's an adult, and see truth in what that story is telling, and be proud of the messaging that's in that story. So I think prior to being a father, I didn't give all that much thought to, obviously I had a sort of natural internal moral compass, and there was things that I wouldn't want to write about, and there's things I wanted to write about, but I definitely began to think about it a lot more when I became a dad. And I think anybody who becomes a dad, who is a content creator or not, begins to really start to think about, what sort of messages are you sending to your children, either through your work or through your life, your character.
Yeah. And then to follow up on that, then, Tobias, what would you say are the top values that you're hoping to instill in Gabriel growing up?
An old spiritual mentor of mine once told me that the thing that's probably the most important thing that you can do for your children, particularly for sons, is to tell them that they have what it takes, that they're capable, that they're competent, that they can do what they set their mind to. I think it's a question that boys and girls as well, but boys in particular are constantly asking of themselves and of their parents, but particularly of their father, is, do I have what it takes? Can I do this? Am I a boy who is capable? And I think a lot of men don't have that question answered by their fathers, either through their father's silence or their fathers answer it in the negative, by being overly critical, by basically saying, no, you don't have what it takes. You're not good enough. And so a lot of men, and this is absolutely true for me, a lot of men grow up continuously asking that question, do I have what it takes? Even when their own father may have already passed away. My father passed away, unfortunately, fairly early, when he was in his early 60s. And most men take that question to their work. So they use work to try to answer the question, do I have what it takes? And the unfortunate thing is, and I found this to be the case, is that the question cannot be answered with success. There's no amount of success in work that will ever satisfy the question of do I have what it takes? The question can only be answered through love, and best answered by a father and a mother's love when that man is a boy. And if you can instill that sort of basic, sort of fundamental confidence into the heart of a boy, I think you've probably done 85% of your job as a dad. If they can carry that, if they can carry that certitude with them as they go into the teen and then adult years, I think that's going to help them immensely.
Yeah, very, very well said, Tobias. And I bring on a lot of Navy SEALs and Green Berets and stuff on the podcast. That's one of the things that as boys, we're always trying to get that approval from our dad. So I always have these conversations with them. I mean, it's, when your dad is a SEAL team operator, that's a lot for a boy to look and live up to, So
yeah, it is.
I have these conversations, and some of the other, heavy hitters that I've had on as well too. I mean, and that's true. I lost my parents before, in my early 20s, long before I became a father myself too. So I understand a lot of what you're talking about there. Now, what about, you mentioned there you got writing projects, writing partner. What kind of projects do you have coming up here? What's next for you? What can we be looking forward to here?
We one of our movies that we wrote for Netflix. It's a movie called Night Books, which is actually based on a book by the same name, Night Books. That just finished filming in Canada last month. So that's going to be coming out on Netflix sometime this year. We're really excited. There's some amazingly talented people that we collaborated with on that project. We can't wait for it to come out. And it was actually, it was particularly exciting for me because it was one of the first projects I'd been involved with that Gabriel could really appreciate. In fact, the book, when we were given the book, I actually gave it to Gabriel first to read. It was age appropriate. I think he was 11 at the time. He read it, he loved it, and that's sort of told me, okay, there's something here that Mickey and I should take a look at. So he was my sort of market test for that book.
Very cool.
So we're really excited about Night Books. There's another book that I can't mention right now, but that my wife, my son, and I all read together as a family during our 30-minute nighttime reading session, and we all loved it. It's sort of a teen wilderness survival story. And I reached out to the author, telling him how much I loved the book, and I asked if he could, if he wouldn't mind giving us an option on the film rights for a year. And he was very generous in giving us film rights. So we are going to try to pitch that movie in the coming months and see if we can get that going. We're really excited about that. It's just two teen boys who have to survive together in the wilderness and form a strong bond as a result.
Awesome. Yeah, it definitely sounds like a banger all the way there. I look forward to seeing that. And last thing I'm going to hit you with here, Tobias, I know you probably touched on it a little bit as we were talking, but I love to ask all the dads to get on the podcast. What type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about-to-be father who's out there listening?
What I would say is I would say that new dad, you have what it takes. I think one of the things that I struggled with when I just had my son is I had this voice in me that would it was an accusatory voice. It was sort of a condemning voice. I would say, Tobias, give it up. You're not going to be a good dad. You're not going to be able to be present to your son. You're not going to be able to engage your son. And I think you mentioned that book, where we talked about resistance. The
War of Art.
The War of Art. There's this voice that he calls resistance in that book, which will say the same things to men and women that are trying to start any creative endeavor. And I think that same voice will do it to new fathers. We'll try to saddle them with guilt. We'll try to saddle them with, and I would just say you absolutely can do it. It is in you to overcome whatever your past, whatever hurt and wounds and pain that you've endured in your past. You can overcome for the sake of the love of your son or for your daughter, and you can absolutely do it. If I can, anybody can.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. This has been a lot of fun for me. I got to say, Tobias Iaconis, you're a first-class father all the way, and thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you, Alec. It was an honor.